Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our 5th edition of K-Talk, our monthly live show with all the exciting topics of the coming trade show K in the German city of Düsseldorf. Long before the exhibitors built up their booth on the show floor in October, the topics and technologies are being prepared. That's good news for us, so we can discuss about them already now. The title of today's edition is Industry Climate Neutrality, and we try to find out if it's still a wish or already reality and how the future will look like. To do so, I invited some dear guests, all of them true experts in this sector. Here we go. Welcome, Karla Censi. You are managing sustainable development at the Brazilian company Braskem. Good to have you with us in regards to Sao Paulo.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for this nice welcome. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in the session today.
Next is Kerstin Sochor, co-founder of the Austrian carbon cycle circle ÖCC2 and editor of the leading Austrian print publication Österreichische Kunststoffzeitschrift. Welcome, Kerstin.
Thanks, Guido, for inviting me today, and I hope you all have a nice session today with us.
And number 3 is Professor Dr. Reinhold Lang, head of the Institute of Polymeric Materials and Testing at University Linz. Greetings to Austria, and thanks for joining, Reinhold.
Thanks, Guido, for the invitation. Good afternoon to everybody.
Before we start with our discussion, I'd like to invite you, dear viewers, to participate and send your questions and remarks to us here in the studio. I will pass them on to my guests and we will try to answer them during the show. So don't hesitate. The more you participate, the more fun we all have. So let's start. My first question goes to you, Reinhold. How far away is the plastics industry from climate neutrality today?
Well, Guido, asking an academic such a broad question, you are running the risk of an 1-hour lecture right now. But let me perhaps be brief and concise. I'd like to answer this question by referring to 3 dimensions, all of which are policy dimensions. The one is related to climate neutrality as a policy dimension, the second one to circular economy as a policy dimension, and the third one opens the scope to the UN agenda with the Sustainable Development Goals, which is then even broader. So let's just first, as far as climate neutrality in policies is concerned, currently, the corridor that we observe worldwide ranges from, say, climate neutrality goals 2040 to 2060. Austria is on the low end with 2040, Germany 2045, the European Union 2050, and even China put out a pledge for climate neutrality 2060 or sooner. So this essentially implies a huge transformation of the fossil fuel industry as an energy primary supplier into a full renewable energy system, possibly on a worldwide scale. So this is 20 to 40 years from now. So essentially, your question boils down to 2 sub-questions with regards to plastics. The first is, can the plastics industry be faster than this climate neutrality goals on a political dimension? And the second is related, and I think this is even the more important one in terms of the impact and the scope. What is the role of the plastics industry in this overall transformation? Because we must be keeping in mind plastics depend and are closely interlinked with fossil fuels, of course, on the resource side. And I will open up another dimension in a moment on the emissions side. So that brings me actually to the policy dimension of circular economy. I think from the perspective of plastics, our primary issue is going to be to resolve the problem of circular economy with plastics, but that is ultimately closely interlinked to the topic of climate neutrality. And I will give you a few numbers in a moment, but even broader is the whole issue of sustainable development. So that sort of sketches the scope and climate.
But let me, Reinhold, let me quickly interrupt you because before we go to the numbers, I'd like to hear also Karla's point of view regarding this, because when we are talking about those climate neutrality topics, we cannot only look at one country. We have to do it on a wider scale, as Reinhold already said. You are working for an international company. Where do you see the best advances at the moment? Where do you see the best approaches to come close to this target of climate neutrality?
Great, Guido. Thanks for that. And Braskem is a Brazilian company. We've been working in terms of sustainable development since its creation on 2002. And I can share picking some milestones that guided us through this sustainable journey. In 2009, 2010, we developed the green polyethylene based here in Brazil, in the south of Brazil, which is made of ethanol from sugarcane. And we start developing this green polyethylene market in Brazil, but the production was located in Brazil. And as you said, Brazil is a global company, and we sell the green polyethylene globally. We have big customers and consumers in Asia, Europe, North America that consumes and sees value on the green polyethylene. And due to that, we start preparing ourselves for some expansions on the renewable feedstock side. So we have now announced the increase of capacity for 60 K tons a year, plus on the 200 KT per year of green polyethylene. So we are increasing our capacity to increase the products in the market due to a higher demand. And not only that, but Braskem has been building its strategy around circular economy since 2016, 2018, when circular economy starts to pass as a business unit inside Braskem. So we start building our portfolio for post-consumer plastics. So we have a portfolio of PCR resins, and due to a circular economy increase demand in the market. So circular economy and carbon neutrality, it starts in Braskem since 2002, 2008, 2010, with the build of green polyethylene, circular economy. And then by the end of last year, we have developed and then also announced our sustainable goals commitment through 7 dimensions, in which 2 are our main focus, which is the circular economy, with plastic waste elimination, and climate change, which is also a concern here in Braskem, not only, and I mean Braskem, as you mentioned, globally. We have facilities in Brazil operating for the green polyethylene. We are looking that for also in Asia. We have some projects being approved with joint ventures in Europe, also in North America, where we can build better things with cooperation and collaboration. We are doing this together with a lot of partnerships around the world. So Braskem.
We will come back to that, Karla. We will come back to that in a moment. Let me ask Kerstin in the meantime about the impact that the plastics industry can have on this global goal of climate neutrality, because experts say that there is only a single-digit part or percentage of CO2 emissions within the plastics industry. So the question might be, can we do anything about it by even improving a lot within the plastics industry, or do you see it differently?
Well, Guido, I think I'm lucky in 2 ways, because on the one hand side, I live in Austria, where we have a lot of innovative companies, not only on the recycling sector, machinery, as you all know, but also dealing with circular economy in general. And then my business is mainly the plastics business, or that's where nearly my whole or half of my life I've been spending in. So and there in the plastics industry, I see a lot of advantages, a lot of possibilities that we have, because we are very lucky with this material, because we can produce it from so many diverse streams, like waste streams, like any waste stream you can think of, like organic waste or used plastic waste, or even CO2, the CCU technologies that we might speak of today as well. And there's a lot of innovation going on. And when you mention it's only like a single digit that we contribute, the plastic industry contribute to climate neutrality, I think there can be much more than that if we think of the carbon capture, if we think of many other products that might capture carbon, durable or for a long time, let's say. It's the good thing is that we have so many innovative companies in our industry. I think this can be the main game changer for many other industries. And when we think of cement industry, carbon capture, producing plastic goods from that. So polymer, I think, gives us a lot of opportunities that we might not even think of. But Professor Lang knows more about that, I guess. There are so many things in the pipeline. I hope. And Reinhold Lang, you gave me a good perspective last time we saw each other in Vienna, because you said you've never been that positive before, which also gave me a lot of positive energy again, because sometimes when you look at it and you hear the numbers, as you mentioned, Guido, it seems perspectiveless. So we may not lose our good energy and put more energy in all the resource savings and everything we can do. So.
And I will ask Reinhold right away, because I also heard that that the image problem of the plastics industry has almost been overcome by the plenty of activities that plastics companies are doing at the moment. And in preparation of the coming K in Düsseldorf, I have the impression that the world is turning upside down. Many companies are starting campaigns that I've never seen before. So is it reason enough to be positive in regards to the future, or do you still have your doubts, Reinhold?
Well, with regards to the image, I still have my doubts that it's going this fast. In fact, in my perspective, I don't notice the image shift back to where I know it in the 90s, in the 80s, in the 70s. So this is how long I've been working in this area. Nevertheless, there are a number of other very important signals to be optimistic, like Kerstin mentioned. And let me just mention a couple of them very briefly. First, we are returning to a fact evidence-based discussion. And the first issue is, okay, we need to admit, okay, our direct contribution to climate change are not as huge as many people would like to have them. There's good studies out, for example, to give you a comparison, shifting our nutrition from heavy protein, meat-based nutrition, for example, to vegetarian nutrition, has a 4 times as big impact on climate mitigation than all the plastics recycling efforts, even if they work perfectly. So there's very solid numbers out on that. And that brings me back to my question, what can the role of the plastics industry be in the overall transformation of this type? And here I'd like to refer to something that is well known as the wag the dog puzzle. If we look at the transformation of the fossil fuel industry, there's only about, say, 3 to 6, depending on what you count, oil, gas, coal, in terms of these numbers. But there is a percentage of 3 to 6% that goes into plastics. So that means From a resource type of perspective, the dog, which is the fossil fuel industry, is by a factor of 20, 30, 40 larger than what the plastics industry needs. On the other end of the scale, in terms of emissions, the picture is even magnified. If one looks at the invisible emissions of CO2 compared to the visible pollution with plastics or plastics waste on a worldwide scale, there's a factor of 200 invisible emissions, and they provide climate change. Now, fortunately, with plastics, we have the visible emissions. And this is why I say we must assume, although we are the smaller part of all these issues, resource-wise and emission-wise, there's good and high pressure, and we have the innovation capability to shift the entire system, like the tail of the dog is shaking the entire dog. And I have here, say, a conclusion in order to state the role of the plastics industry definitely must be to be the primary driver transforming the entire fossil fuel industry, as it is so closely related. And many people say there is no silver bullet. I claim the opposite. There is one silver bullet, perhaps, that sticks out in this role. And this is what Kerstin mentioned. This is the issue of carbon circularity, carbon capture and utilization. And let me state it very bluntly. Without industrial carbon circularity, CO2 circularity, there is no sustainable development and there is no circular economy.
Okay, I would like to come back to this image topic, because I know that all of the exhibitors at K and everybody involved in the plastics industry is suffering from that image problem, which partly is a self-made one. But Kerstin, the industry in the recent decades never even tried to build up a positive image in regards to things like climate, in regards to CO2 emissions, because they were all caring about their products, which in fact are quite good. The plastics product quite good. They are lightweight, they are durable, they can do millions of positive things, but there are also drawbacks, and the industry not really cared about that in the last decades. Now, all of a sudden, they need to do that. How do they cope with this demand? How do they present themselves as climate improver on the market? Do you like the job that the industry is doing, or do you think they still need to train more to be better in this regard?
Well, as you said, Guido, the history of plastics is a 70-year-old history of success. Actually, there has never been a reason to talk about sustainability or something. It's been coming up in the industry actually in the last maybe 10, 15 years. And the good thing about it is, like, since K 2 times ago, so it was like what do we have now? 2016. Also, like, all stakeholders taking place in sustainability issues or talking about sustainability issues, which is so important. Also, the machinery industry, especially like the material side, they have been talking about it for quite a while, like Karla also mentioned. But now I think there is all industry partners now in this discussion. And why is it so important to talk about the image? Well, I think the image problem is like based on maybe 90% on packaging issues, I guess. I mean, tell me if I'm not right. So, but that's my personal opinion. I think that the main things that consumers see is packaging issues, of course, is rivers that are full of plastics and oceans, and we may not at all put this aside. We have to work on technologies to make plastics more sustainable and not build up help building up the collecting systems. I think this is all we have to be aware that we have been working and shipping these all these great inventions to Asia, to South America, to everywhere, like mostly based on European technology. So we have to help those regions now to make things better, because this in fact is mainly responsible for the image the plastics has in Europe, in the US, in of course South America, and so on. We don't have the big problem with waste here in Austria and Germany. We all know that, but we have to take our responsibility for that. And I can see that a lot of companies are now working very, very hard on their, not only on their image, but on their action to make the image better, or to make products better, to make them more sustainable, to find better solutions, to find better packaging solutions, and so on. So yes, Guido, I see a lot of efforts, but there's so much to do. I mean, sorry, if I can say just one more sentence, we have a material that can be recycled in so many ways. I mean, this is the only material that can be recycled mechanically, that can be recycled chemically, and all in the meantime quite efficiently. I mean, we still have to work on a lot of issues, of course, but there's just many ways to deal with it and to reuse it. I still like the 3 R's actually: reduce, reuse, recycle. We should keep them in mind all the time. I think this would help to keep the cycle up and to close the loop.
Karla, I'm curious about how much influence can companies like Braskem, for example, have on the materials being in use by the industry? You have hundreds, you have thousands of customers buying your materials. So there is a saying in economics and in marketing saying, as a provider, a supplier, you cannot prescribe, you cannot give, or you cannot have influence on the products that your customers are asking for. They will buy and pay for what they need. So where can you have influence with your new greener materials? Do you think the customers in the future will ask for them? Will they accept them? What is your perception of that?
I think, Guido, that the market is already demanding for it. I think that the consumers are already demanding and worrying about topics such as climate change and plastic waste. So that's why we have been increasing our capacity, and we will increase our capacity because we already have some projects to deliver. We already have some customers interested on that amount of volume. The portfolio for the PCR resins are not being enough for the amount of and the diversity of plastics packaging that the industry wants to make. So we need to increase our portfolio. So we've seen a shift in the market since 2010 when we developed the green polyethylene. There was a shift in the market in the last, I would say, 4 years. On the consumers, and I mean globally, not only here in South America, but in Europe, mainly in Europe and Asia, we've seen a shift towards a more sustainable or with a less impact on environmental, looking for types of plastics for packaging and products itself. And I think that the industry, as Kristen and Professor Lang was mentioning about image, I think the industry is the main is the protagonist of what we have today. So we want to be part of the solution as well, and we need to make it better. We need to influence the market. We need to influence other industries to go in this direction. So I think we have an important role within this.
Reinhold, do you share this opinion?
Most of it with perhaps one or two additions. First, it takes many, many steps also in order to improve our image, and it will take time. But this should not hinder us to do the proper things. What I would like to stress perhaps at this point is, among the many things that can be done and are being done, there are a few issues that I would refer to in economics language as sensitive intervention points. This is like wag the dog problem. The tail is wagging the dog. Here we're looking at those areas. If we turn those knobs properly in the right direction, then they shift the system. And this is actually the role of the plastics industry must assume, as I pointed out before, in transforming the entire fossil fuel industry. Now, if you look at the credibility and the feasibility of the strategies of the plastics industry and the fossil fuel industry, particularly in those areas where they are sort of interlinked, even ownership-wise, then it turns out they all have climate neutrality strategies, the more progressive, let's put it this way. The progressive ones have climate neutrality strategies being climate neutral by 2050 or sooner. If you look at the roadmap, there's lots of things that could be discussed. Is it ambitious enough? Are the interim goals of 2030, 2035? So here I see some weaknesses, and I think one could be more courageous in order to be ahead of the entire fossil fuel industry with those aspects that refer to the plastics industry. And now it's getting a bit complicated. In industry, and I'm sure Karla knows, there are these scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 definitions of climate neutrality. And essentially, at the end, large scale, it boils down to scope 3, upstream and downstream. And this is an aspect that is just coming into the discussion, but this is, as it is coming into the discussion in the industry, upstream, downstream means not only our production is climate neutral, also our resources and what we do with our products in the utilization phase is becoming climate neutral. So this is the real challenge. And the sooner the polymer and plastics industry assumes this role of being a key driver for this development, and there are many, many positive signals out there, but they have not yet been recognized in the general public. They have not yet been recognized even in politics. There's many discussions we are in, and I do hope that this is going to be one big key message at the K Fair this year. So there's so many positive aspects that we can provide, and hopefully we will then return to that image in the late 60s, 70s. Some of you may recall a movie by the name The Graduate with Dustin Hoffman, with the famous sentence in there. There's one key magic word I would like to provide you, is the uncle telling his young graduate, saying, it's plastics, the future is plastics. But this is a significant way to go, but I think we are on the road and we can just invite everybody to join.
Kerstin, I would like to pick up this word by Reinhold, and something came immediately to my mind, which is self-confidence. I have the impression that many of the companies which are about to exhibit at the K are missing self-confidence, because in the past they haven't been toggling those topics like climate change, like a circular economy, which are topics of the mankind. So we're not only talking about nice little products made from plastic, but we're talking about the future of mankind. So maybe it's a bit unfair, this question, but how would you, or what would you recommend the industry stakeholders to improve their self-confidence? Do they have reason for that? Do they have good reason to be more self-confident?
They absolutely have, Guido. They absolutely have. As we said, we really live in a good industry. And I like like the sentence, "The future is plastics." I mean, we will only survive with plastic and not without plastic. So we all know that, and it'll be a difficult discussion. So what can I recommend? Actually, recommend is that we have to get closer together. That we have to speak with one voice, with one face, because there's, as both of you already said, there's a lot of regulations coming up, or even, I mean, already here, in the pipeline, and a lot of regulations to fulfill, and all the ESG criteria that comes up for the companies will not make it easier for the companies to deal with all the Green Deal and other regulations, all the European and worldwide regulations. I cannot mention them all. There's so many of them. Well, there's a lot to talk to people like governments, NGOs, people they have never talked before. Actually, those companies. I think that's what you mean, Guido. You have so many new partners to talk to. All your people delivering you parts. They want to know things from you, like how are your workers coming to work, by car or by bike, or I mean, there's so many answers to give in the future. But I think there's a lot of self-confidence in the industry, because there is a big solidarity. Is that how you say? Solidarity. Because we all know we have to speak with one voice in the plastics industry. We have good solutions. We have to show them. We have to, to just hold our heads up high and work for the right solutions. We all know that if we don't come up with solutions, who else should do that? So it's so important to talk to young people, to inspire them, to make research in plastics issues, sustainability issues. Reinhold, you know that, how difficult it is to find young people to inspire for that issues as well. So we actually founded, or I'm co-founder of an association. You might think, oh, another association, but we founded an Austrian carbon cycle circle, where we try to have all the stakeholders or all the partners in the industry, to bring them together, to speak with one voice, to speak to governments, to speak about regulations, to speak to young people.
And how about in South America?
So,
Is that similar, Karla? Do you see those joint forces between, for example, the chemical industry, the plastics processors, the machine manufacturers? Is there some kind of teamwork going on to a bigger extent, for example, in comparison to Europe or North America or China?
Yes, we work a lot on cooperation with our stakeholders. We cannot do anything alone, so we do a lot with our partners, not only our customers, but we've been developing a lot with our suppliers. We buy ethanol from sugarcane, so we have a real close relationship with our suppliers in order to develop a better field for this market. We've been working a lot with our consumers also, to trying to engage more them on a conscious consumption. So this is things that we are doing a lot, not only here in South America, but globally. And there is also, in terms of open innovation, where we can, when we can collaborate and co-create more with universities, startups, entrepreneurs. We're doing that a lot. In Brazil, we have Braskem labs to accelerate startups, and we have a focus on circular economy and climate change. In Europe and North America, we have an open innovation forum also to develop hard tech when we look for hard science for climate change and advanced recycling also. So we look outside our company to join efforts.
Reinhold, there is one discrepancy showing up. When I'm looking at the newspapers, when I'm looking at the social media discussions about companies or even institutes developing bio-based materials as an alternative to fossil materials, there is already a counterbalance on the other side saying, hey, no, stop with those bio-based materials because we have this food or plate discussion. How do you judge that? Is that the right way to maybe develop new materials which are based on biomaterials? Or do you put your money more on the circular economy topics?
Well, Guido, before I get to that issue, I'd still like to say a few sentences to the topic that you brought up. It's about the future of mankind. My personal experience with students is in various areas of the world. When I give my Sustainable Development in Plastics lecture series, at the beginning, I always start with a survey of the students. And to me, at first, the result was very surprising. So one of those questions I posed to the students, are you optimistic or pessimistic, for example, about the future of Europe? Second question, third question, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future of mankind? So are we running into an extinction phase, perhaps with plastic, with mankind? And the interesting thing is, overwhelmingly, in Europe, pessimistic attitudes among young people as to these questions. So there's a majority who is pessimistic. There are a lot of those people who think we will not survive the next 1,000 years. So this must make one think. Alternatively, if I do that with students in China or in Africa, quite the opposite is happening. So they are a lot more optimistic. And I think what we need to come back is not only think about the future of mankind. If we would like to think about that, we need to think about where we're coming from and what is the role of plastics. And there's one important issue on plastics. The most intelligent invention in evolution was the invention of the DNA, a polymer. So that shows us a polymer, the structure of our materials is actually at the essence of the beginning of life. So this was 3.8 billion years ago, so quite a while ago. If you ask geochemists, for example, on these evolutionary issues, there's one by the name Russell who was once asked prominently what he thinks the meaning of life, one of the big three philosophical questions. Where do we come from? Where are we heading? And what is the meaning of the life? So his answer was, I'm not sure about the meaning of life, but the essence of life is hydrogenation of carbon dioxide. That is actually what photosynthesis is. So looking ahead, this is why I called it, this is the silver bullet we need to look at. And the plastics industry, it's high time to talk about the second important innovation, which was at the origin of humankind, which was taming fire. So currently, I notice the polymer industry is sort of rushing into mechanical recycling, discussing all kinds of chemical recycling. Most of the key target numbers have no substance in terms of eco-efficiency analysis, either policy goals or business goals or whatever. And I think we need to take a systemic view on this entire issue of options of circularity ways and pathways with plastics. And one important option will be incineration, utilizing the heat energy, and coupled then with carbon capture and utilization. As long as we don't go open out and talk about this issue as the key solution, we will not be credible, because there will always be so much plastics waste. No matter how high we get up the targets, there will be so much left with an increasing market then we always run into this dilemma, doing something, but it will not be sufficient. So I think this is one of the key issues that we need to get out, and then we need to start to bring it to the ground. And there's a number of companies right now, and now it's becoming extremely cross-sectoral. Kerstin was already mentioning, okay, we need to combine the business interests of the cement industry, the steel industry, the plastics industry around the issue, how can we run carbon in a circle? And if those large industry pick up this topic, they will be the ones that drive us to climate neutrality either by 2035, 2040, or 2050. Whatever we achieve will be good. If we don't do that, I think these are just policy numbers staying in some papers, and we will be missing the goals.
As I offered you, ladies and gentlemen, dear viewers, you have the opportunity to participate by means of a chat and ask your questions and give some remarks, and I will pass them on to my talking guests here. And there is one remark we received already. A gentleman saying, plastics needs per global law a minimum value like €1 per kilo at the end of life. Well, it's not a question, but a remark. But I think it's a good idea to say at the end of the life of plastics, it still has a huge value. And he puts a price tag on it. That might be a good idea. Or Karla, what do you mean?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. We need to put a price on that, because at the end, it's achieved at the end of its life, but we can still use it, we can still recycle, so it's a cost involved, just like as we have the carbon pricing. So why not? We need to study, and it's a nice provocation.
Okay, so we are approaching the end of our little show, but I would like to have your opinion and a short reply, please. Why would you think would it make sense to come to Düsseldorf in October? What is your perspective? What are you looking for most at this global plastics show in Düsseldorf? Let's start with Kerstin. Kerstin, one reason to come to Düsseldorf in October.
Well, of course, there's always reasons to come to Düsseldorf because it's a nice city. But the show, of course, is so special, and I think the big possibilities we find there is to network, to find new partners, because we can only find climate neutrality if we all stick together very closely. And there are so many great partners in this industry already, but I think there's lots more of partnerships to come up, and I think circular economy itself, the name says it itself. We need to get in the circle, and it takes all partners in the industry. So I hope everyone goes there, finds new interesting people to talk to, have some nice chats, some nice drinks as well, maybe in the evening. So no, it's always good to come to Düsseldorf and see the Kshow. So hope to see you all there.
Okay, we do so. Karla, what's your favorite thing and the favorite reason to come to this show?
After all this period we have passed with online meetings, it will be fantastic to meet everybody in person. And I think Kshow, it's a good opportunity to make connections, as Kerstin has mentioned. So it's a great show for those live connections. And the game changing on climate change and circular economy has started. We need to present our results and make connections to achieve better results. So that's why we are interested on being part of Kshow.
Great, thanks a lot. Reinhold, will this coming Kshow be more than a technical presentation?
First, this Kshow will be the key event in terms of providing information on the innovation perspectives of plastics around the entire topic of sustainable development, with key areas of climate neutrality, contributions of plastics to that field, and circular economy. So it's the event worldwide, but there's two issues maybe from before that I have not answered yet: the pricing and the issue of bioplastics. As far as the pricing is concerned, I think rather than pure plastics pricing, we have plastics waste prices, for example, in Europe, as the plastics packaging waste money, which is 800 euros per ton of plastics. Now, if you compare that with the carbon CO2 price, so this is an order of magnitude, more than an order of magnitude higher. So I think the real important point to go would be a proper carbon CO2 pricing. And I tell you, the vehicle that would all that start, what I'm talking about is a CO2 price of roughly 130 euros per ton. I think we are speedily moving into that direction. So that is probably the point where I would say where Adam Smith originally came up with his idea, the invisible hand is sort of controlling how economy develops and evolves. I think the carbon pricing of that order could be the invisible hand properly driving climate neutrality issues and circular economy issues. The second topic, and I hope Karla is back again, with regards to bioplastics. I'm very anxious to see how that evolves. First, bioplastics is a complex topic in terms of definitions, so I'm not getting into that today. But if we mean plant-based resources, historically, plastics have evolved, of course, out of cellulose plastics, even before that, casein plastics. So some stages in the Middle Ages, we were using milk to produce plastics, so to speak. And of course, there's this still a wide area of natural rubber that's being used. But if one looks at the future dimension and the scale of what we have to resolve in terms of the sustainable development goals, there is this issue of competition between raw material use for technologies and providing sufficient nutrition. That is the one issue that we need to keep in mind. And the second issue, as a technologist, interestingly, it turns out photosynthesis is not good. It's extremely lousy in terms of transforming energy-wise CO2 and water into some polymer molecule. And currently, with the technologies we have available, carbon capture and utilization technologies, if we use wind energy, solar photovoltaics, or even high-temperature solar thermal systems, is by an order of magnitude higher in the efficiency. So that means less area intensive, and that opens a whole new gate of industry and technology innovations that I come back to my sort of silver bullet. Carbon capture and utilization is the game changer in an all renewable energy system, which we need to move to for many, many good reasons.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our today's K-Talk. It's been a real pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for participating. And I wouldn't have expected that this talk would be such an emotional one. Hey, we're talking about climate neutrality, and this is getting emotional, and a wonderful dynamics in that. So thank you very much, and regards to all of you, and we will meet in Düsseldorf. Dear viewers, thank you for joining today. If you want to watch our K-Talk again or share it with your friends and colleagues, just have a look at our landing page where we will shortly place the video on demand. You will find all our previous shows there as well. If you want, we will meet again next month in our edition number 6 on June 30th. We will discuss about plastic trends in the mobility and automotive industry. So don't miss it. Thanks again for watching. Stay healthy and bye-bye.